The ancestral bowing posture you're about to learn dissolves fascial knots and releases trapped energy in minutes, like ice thawing. Your thoracic fascia stores the memory of every time you drew your chest tight in the face of threat, forging a shield that drains your creative power without your noticing, a quiet tax on breath. There is a memory tissue between your sternum and solar plexus that determines how much energy you have available to create, decide, and express, the gate that swings open with reverent humility. This matters because fascial rigidity keeps your nervous system on constant watch, limiting your breath and fragmenting your presence, like glass spidering under stress. Now, notice how your chest moves as you breathe. Sense whether air reaches the back ribs with ease, or gets trapped at the surface, skimming like wind over shallow water. This simple observation already prepares your body to receive the ritual, turning chronic tension into usable strength, steadier and focused. The secret lies in the sacred geometry of the bow, an embodied configuration that activates hermetic principles of transmutation, where form teaches content and your body becomes a living temple of transformation, guided by breath, angle, and quiet intention. Dhanurasana transmutes fascial tension into creative power through a direct dialogue between conscious intention and the intelligence of connective tissue. The bow pose, where breath, nerve, and fascia listen and answer. By the end of this practice, you will have dissolved the gummy adhesions that kept your vital energy captive and will feel the return of full respiratory amplitude, with air arriving spontaneously into the deep layers of the chest and back body, the sternum brightening like a skylight. The creative power, once siphoned by chronic tensions, will flow freely again, allowing decisions to arise with clarity and your presence to radiate magnetic stability, calm, grounded, unmistakable. Initiatory schools understood that certain bodily forms function as master keys capable of unlocking specific internal states, where posture not only expresses consciousness but actively shapes it, tilting perception and mood like light passing through a prism. This configuration organizes your axis into a tensegrity geometry, creating force vectors that invite stiffened fascia to regain its original plasticity through gentle distributed traction, breath-led micro-movements that rehydrate the matrix and restore its living glide. Contemporary neuroscience unveils the precise mechanisms behind this ancient wisdom through polyvagal theory, which shows how the vagus nerve interprets signals of safety or threat based on the quality of breath and posture, the depth, cadence, and architecture that the body silently broadcasts. When the thoracic fascia remains contracted, specialized proprioceptors relay constant danger signals to the nervous system, keeping the organism in an energy-hungry state of vigilance, like a sentry who never hears the dawn bell. Recent research on connective tissue reveals that fascia has independent contractile properties and responds directly to neurological commands, acting as a communication network that records and stores emotional patterns, a living archive that can be revised when the body is shown safer shapes and deeper breaths. This living bodily archive holds each memory of defensive contraction, yet it also preserves the innate capacity to return to its original state of expansion when it receives the right stimulus through precise postural geometry, steady breath, aligned angles, and reverent attention. Begin lying face down on a firm surface, forehead supported on a low pillow or folded towel to keep your breath free, the throat soft and unpinched. Let your legs extend naturally and your arms rest loose by your sides, palms heavy, eyes quiet. The first phase of the ritual prepares the nervous system through directed breathing that activates specific mechanoreceptors in the thoracic fascia, creating the ideal neurological environment for the release to come. like dimming the lights before a curtain lifts. Inhale slowly, consciously directing air into the posterior ribs, allowing expansion to happen at the back of the chest rather than the front. While you count mentally to 4, feel the ribs widen sideways and subtly bow the spine, as if the lungs were opening a pair of quiet doors. Maintain that dorsal expansion for a full 2 seconds, noticing how the back broadens and creates a gentle pressure against the floor, like a tide meeting the shore. In this full pause, fascial proprioceptors register the new range and send safety signals to the vagus nerve, initiating the relaxation cascade that allows the fascia to yield without resistance, not forced but welcomed. Exhale with control while keeping the chest open, avoiding the automatic collapse that usually happens. And count 6 beats for this release phase, as if pouring water from a high vessel without spilling. In the empty pause that follows, for 2 seconds, observe the different quality of internal silence and the sense of space created behind the sternum. A cool alcove of breathless ease where attention can rest. Repeat this 4-count cycle precisely 4 times, directing your attention to the solar plexus and asking the fundamental inner question: where exactly can the air not reach? This inquiry is not mental but proprioceptive. You are mapping zones of fascial rigidity through the quality of your breath, like a cartographer tracing rivers by how they sound. Some areas will respond immediately with expansion and warmth, a soft blooming behind the breastbone, while others remain dense and resistant, cool and opaque. Welcome both responses without forcing, for fascia only yields when it feels safe to release defensive patterns it believes are necessary for your protection. Patience signals safety. Pressure repeats the past. After completing the 4 breath cycles, remain still for 30 seconds, observing sensations that arise spontaneously, tingling waves of warmth, micropulsations, or the sense that something inside is reorganizing, stacking itself with new intelligence. These are objective markers that the connective tissue is responding to conscious command and preparing for the geometric transformation to come. Like scaffolding, quietly shifting before a structure reveals its final form. Now your hands reach your ankles with slow, deliberate movements, establishing firm but non-aggressive contact as your fingers wrap the fronts of the ankles, the skin meeting skin with a clear, grounded intent. The movement that follows arises from the intention to lift the chest and knees off the floor simultaneously, but without hurry or excess force. You are inviting the fascia to reorganize, not forcing a posture, letting the shape bloom from inside. The hips remain as a stable anchor against the ground, creating the fulcrum that distributes forces along the spine in a balanced way. A quiet hinge that keeps direction true. The sternum gently projects forward and upward, not through intense muscular contraction, but as a natural consequence of the traction generated by hands on ankles. A glide rather than a push, the heart cresting as the back body learns to arc and breathe. The first stopping point comes when you feel air entering the chest more easily, an objective sign that the fascia has begun to yield and create real inner space, like a door unsticking from its frame. In this moment, pay close attention to the fascial release signals that arise spontaneously. A localized warmth between the shoulder blades or behind the sternum, involuntary sighs that surface unbidden, or micro vibrations running through the torso like subtle waves, the body's quiet Morse code of yes. These are not side effects, but confirmations that the connective tissue is responding to conscious command and releasing long-held tension patterns, old bracing, unthreading, stitch by stitch. Remain in this first amplitude for 15 to 30 seconds, breathing naturally and allowing the form to work upon the fascia, as if the posture itself were a gentle craftsman patiently reshaping the inner lattice. Fine adjustments determine whether the practice frees or compresses, and the most crucial is to keep the pubis hovering just a few millimeters off the floor, enough to create gentle traction along the anterior fascial line without overloading the lower back, as if the low belly were buoyed by a quiet tide. Lengthen the nape without collapsing, as though an invisible cord were drawing the crown upward, while the shoulder blades slide down and away from the ears, widening the collarbones and creating the feeling of curtains opening inside the chest. Let the jaw soften and the gaze stay inward so the throat remains ungripped. And fine-tune with micro-tilts of the pelvis until the pull spreads evenly like a well-tuned string. If the lumbar region protests with sharp discomfort, immediately reduce the range and return the bow to the chest, where true release occurs and breath can lead again. The goal is never maximal range, but precision in force distribution, a balanced compass of vectors that allows the thoracic fascia to reclaim its original mobility. In this moment, you are applying the fundamental hermetic principle of solve et coagula directly to fascial tissue, dissolving rigid patterns so that a new energetic organization can coagulate within your body, like salt melting and then reforming into a clearer crystal. The solve phase happens by maintaining the bow shape for a full 2 to 3 minutes, allowing gentle, consistent traction to invite deep fascial layers to release adhesions formed over years of defensive contraction, threads loosening one by one. During this period, breathe naturally without controlling the rhythm, noticing how spontaneous sighs arise and waves of warmth move through the torso, signs that rigidity is dissolving and imprisoned energy is returning to circulation, curving back into your core currents. This is not a conceptual dissolution, but a real structural change you can feel moment by moment. The beginnings of coagula as tissues organize around new vectors of ease. The coagula phase begins when you gently release the ankles and lower your body back to the floor with slow, conscious movements, allowing the new energetic organization to stabilize into usable patterns, like ink settling into clear water. Rest in a modified child's pose, or remain prone for 45 to 60 seconds, observing 3 objective criteria that confirm successful transmutation. First, the quality of your breathing has changed. Air enters more easily and descends spontaneously into regions that were previously blocked, without effort on your part, as if corridors inside the chest had been quietly unbarred. Second, the shoulders respond differently to the inhale. Instead of rising automatically, they remain stable as the ribs expand, indicating that the thoracic fascia has regained mobility and the breath can travel its proper arcs. Third, there is a tangible sense of tonic silence behind the sternum, as if a background noise you never knew was there had finally ceased, leaving a clean stillness where attention can root and your presence can hold steady. This silence is not an absence of sensation, but the presence of a new kind of inner stability, a ballast that will manifest in the coming hours as decisions, arising with clarity, tasks beginning without resistance, and a magnetic quality in your presence that others instinctively sense, like tuning to a cleaner signal. The energy that was being wasted to maintain unnecessary defensive patterns is now available for creation, expression, and initiative, the true mark of alchemical transmutation, where limitation converts into usable power through the precise application of form and conscious intention, and your actions take on the frictionless traction of right timing. Beatrice had worked for 15 years as a creative director at an advertising agency, and in that long fluorescent weather, she felt her voice gradually smothered by invisible layers of tension accumulating. between her chest and throat, like gauze tightening with each deadline. At 50, she perceived that her boldest ideas got stuck somewhere between thought and expression, as though a dense membrane were preventing her genuine creativity from reaching words. A glass pane where breath fogged but could not pass. Meetings that once flowed naturally became internal battlegrounds where she fought a thoracic rigidity that seemed to drain her vital energy before she even opened her mouth. A quiet siphon that left her sentences thin. Her colleagues began to notice a different quality in her presence, less magnetic, more withdrawn, as if she was speaking through a thick veil, voice softened by static, eyes bright but distant. When Beatrice discovered Dhanurasana, practiced as fascial transmutation, something fundamental reorganized within her connective tissue during the first weeks of daily ritual, a quiet reweaving that began before words. The release came in layers, like winter ice thinning from below. First, the return of spontaneous sighs that hadn't happened in years. Then the sense of fresh air finally reaching the forgotten regions of her chest, as though a sealed corridor had been unbarred. In subsequent meetings, her ideas emerged with a clarity and power that surprised even her, as though her creative voice had been unearthed from a fascial burial that had lasted more than a decade. Dust lifted from a long-shelved instrument. Colleagues commented on a palpable shift in her energy. Decisions arose without hesitation. Projects began with organic flow, and there was an almost magnetic quality to the way she occupied space, steady and luminous, as if her presence had found its true resonance again. 3 months later, Beatrice launched the most innovative campaign of her career, a series recognized internationally not for technique, but for the visceral authenticity that breathed through each creative piece, the kind that makes rooms fall quiet, the direct result of creative energy finally circulating freely through a body that had learned to transmute tension into usable power. Audiences felt a steadier pulse in the work, a voice unforced and unmistakably alive. Awards followed, but they were incidental to the sensation that her ideas now moved like clear water, carrying their own momentum. The transformation Beatrice experienced now needs to be sealed into your body through physical markers you can track and reproduce whenever needed, anchors you can return to in moments of pressure. The first sign of real integration is the quality of your breath. Air naturally descends to the solar plexus without conscious command, creating an inner fullness that didn't exist before, a quiet ballast that steadies thought and tone. The second marker is temperature, a subtle, steady warmth behind the sternum, as if an inner hearth had been lit and continued to radiate hours after practice, a glow that does not flare but endures. The third indicator is the jaw, which softens spontaneously and doesn't snap back into tension when you close your eyes or focus on something. The tongue resting wide and the throat unpinched, proof that effort no longer masquerades as control. To anchor this new state, establish a simple signal gesture. Place your right palm over the sternum and press gently for 3 full breaths, recreating the fascial memory of opening, as if knocking softly on a familiar door. Repeat this whenever you feel rigidity trying to return. The touch communicates directly with the connective tissue, reactivating the somatic remembrance of expansion and the pathways your breath just cleared. Your point of return is a phrase paired with posture. My chest breathes space, while you subtly widen the clavicles and allow the shoulder blades to slide down, re-establishing the vector of opening in 15 seconds. The front of the lungs gliding forward as the back body broadens and steadies. This sealing prevents old defensive patterns from reinstalling themselves automatically, creating a new default configuration in your nervous system where expansion is the natural state not contraction, a baseline of spaciousness that your body recognizes and returns to. Over time, the reflex to brace dissolves, and the system orients toward openness first, like a window that now prefers to stay unlatched. The fascia you carried as an archive of limitations has become a library of powers through the sacred geometry of Dhanurasana, revealing a fundamental truth. Your body was never a problem to be solved, but a temple to be activated, a sanctuary with doors you now know how to open. Every fiber of connective tissue that once restricted vital energy now functions as a channel of transmutation, converting chronic tension into magnetic presence you can use in daily life, the circuitry rewired for clarity and calm force. The breath that deepened, the shoulders that stabilized, and the tonic silence that arose behind the sternum are tangible marks of an inner alchemy that occurs when conscious form meets directed intention, where posture gives language to spirit. You have discovered you need not carry the weight of defensive patterns that were once necessary but today only drain your creative capacity, and you can lay them down, not as loss, but as the compost that feeds new power. The philosopher Gaston Bachelard observed that the body is our first house, and we must learn its secret passages before inhabiting any other space. The ritual you learned here opens those passages, between sternum and sacrum, halls long shuttered, allowing trapped energy to return to circulation and creative power to flow again without fascial obstacles, like water reclaiming its riverbed. Each time you assume the bow shape with directed breathing, you are not merely moving muscles, but repatterning the somatic intelligence that meters your available vital force, teaching breath and posture to speak the same language so decisions, relationships, and authentic expression receive steady current instead of sparks. Real transmutation happens when you recognize that what you called tension was in truth frozen creative power waiting for the right command to resume movement, a river held behind a temporary dam. Your body has safeguarded this wisdom for millennia, a lineage inscribed in tissue, and you have simply remembered how to activate it through the ancestral geometry that converts limitation into freedom, restricted breath into full presence, and wasted energy into creative power that now pulses freely through every fiber of your being, steady as a drumbeat. With each precise form and attentive inhale, the ice thaws, channels clear, and the current learns its path again. If this content resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you keep receiving practices that transmute limitation into creative power. Add a brief comment or share this with someone who needs it. Small actions ripple far. Your expanded energy helps this field of wisdom reach more people who are ready to rediscover the alchemical power stored in their own bodies, turning breath into presence and tension into usable strength. I want to know how you feel your fascia responding to the bow of sacred geometry, the warmth behind the sternum, the sighs, the subtle tremors returning to flow. Write in the comments. The ancestral bow posture transmutes my tension into creative power. Type it exactly and notice what shifts as you do. This declaration activates the somatic memory of fascial release you've just experienced and seals your intention in connective tissue, like pressing a signet into soft wax so the pattern holds. Share this video with someone carrying chronic rigidity that drains vital energy, because every person who awakens the potential of Dhanurasana multiplies the field of collective healing, widening the current we all breathe. Click the screen and explore more transformative content on the channel. Each embodied ritual expands your capacity to convert inner resistance into usable creative force, refining presence into action. Remember, when form teaches content, Your body ceases to be a warehouse of tensions and reveals itself as an active temple where limitation is transmuted into freedom through applied consciousness, stone by stone, breath by breath.